Ghost Story Father, the Terrifying Man. Author Dao Thi Tao. Hey Tao, wanna go get some bubble tea? Ngan asked, grabbing Tao's bag strap and startling her. Tao looked at Ngan, slightly taken aback, and replied, oh yeah, sure, let's go. They sat at the bubble tea shop, Tao lost in thought, prompting Ngan to ask, what's on your mind? You look so distracted. Tao hesitated before saying, oh, it's nothing. Well, actually, do you believe in ghosts? Ngan took a sip of her pearl milk tea and nearly choked with laughter as she looked at Tao. Ha, you Tao, I've told you, there are spirits in this world. My grandpa encounters them all the time. But when I told you before, you said I was talking nonsense. Why ask now? Tao hesitated, unsure if she should tell Ngan. Finally, she said, I just feel something. Ngan raised an eyebrow and looked into Tao's eyes. Convinced that Tao was serious, she pressed on. What have you been feeling lately? Are you okay? Tell me honestly, because if something's following you, that's serious trouble. I'm fine, really, Tao insisted. Ngan frowned but continued, curious now. Well, tell me what happened. Maybe hearing about my grandpa's encounters will help you feel less scared, and then you can tell me your story. Tao thought for a moment and then replied, I'm still a bit scared. Maybe you could start by telling me about the things your grandpa has encountered, and then I'll tell you. Ngan sighed deeply, staring at her bubble tea as she began. My grandpa has encountered ghosts many times. Ngan's grandpa, named Huyen, is now 40 years old. According to Ngan's account, when Grandpa Huyen was 5 years old, his cousin passed away in a traffic accident. Grandpa's father brought the cousin's body home, his white shirt stained with blood, which led Grandpa Huyen's mother to discard that shirt altogether. Grandpa Huyen was very fond of his cousin. When Grandpa was young, his cousin often carried him. The cousin would have turned 20 this year, an age full of youth and vigor. He had recently acquired a motorcycle and tended to speed and drive recklessly, which led to the fatal accident. On the day of the cousin's funeral, as they were preparing to lift the coffin, a large, venomous snake appeared from nowhere and slithered into the house. This caused panic and chaos among the mourners. The snake circled around people and even climbed onto a wooden chair in the house, where some brave men chased and captured it using sticks. Throughout the ordeal, Grandpa Huyen's mother cried uncontrollably and lit incense, murmuring something unintelligible. The snake suddenly darted from the chair to the ground and vanished into Grandpa's cousin's bedroom. Despite thorough searching, it seemed the snake had disappeared into thin air within that room. After the burial was complete, Grandpa's mother returned home exhausted and fell into a deep sleep. In her dream, she saw her son standing in a dark corner, looking at her with sad eyes. Kwong, why are you standing there? She asked. Kwong, her son, didn't speak but emitted a sound from his direction, responding to his mother. I came home this morning to visit, but everyone chased me away. I feel so sad. His mother burst into tears and sat on the ground, sobbing. I know you came home. But if I say it, who would believe me? Just come back to visit me, okay? As soon as she finished speaking, Kwong disappeared, leaving his mother crying out his name in anguish. The scene then faded to black, and she woke up in tears, his image still vivid in her mind. Not only during that instance, but on several occasions, she dreamt of him, and upon waking, tears continued to flow uncontrollably, just as in her dreams. Ngan paused in her storytelling and looked at Tao, waiting for her to ask something. Tao immediately asked, as Ngan predicted, how did his mother know that Snake was her son? Ngan smiled and replied, because Huyen's cousin was born in the year of the snake. When such a large snake slithered into the house, circled around everyone, and even climbed onto the chair, his mother started suspecting. Also, I heard from Huyen that about a month after his cousin passed away, a fortune teller passed by their house. Instead of entering or leaving from behind, the fortune teller confidently told Kwang's mother, "Your house has 10 doors." Grandpa Huyen's mother was surprised and replied, "No, my house only has a front door and a back door. Where would 10 doors come from?" The fortune teller smiled and said, "I mean, you should count all the doors inside your house. Bedroom doors, windows, bathroom doors, and toilet doors too." Grandpa's mother was bewildered as she counted in her head. 1 is the front door, 2 the kitchen door, 3 and 4 are the bedroom windows, 5 and 6, including 7, are the bedroom doors, 8 and 9 are the bathroom and toilet doors. So there's still 1 door missing. While Grandpa's mother was lost in thought, the fortune teller continued, "It's the door to the storage room." Grandpa's mother nodded and asked, "That's right, it's the door to the storage room. How did you know?" The fortune teller didn't respond, but looked at Grandpa's mother and continued, "Your house must lock the storage room door. If not, there will be a loss of a family member." Upon hearing this, Grandpa's mother got angry. "What nonsense are you talking about?" The fortune teller didn't reply, but pointed straight at Grandpa's mother's face. "Within a month, if the door remains unlocked, a family member will be lost." Ignoring Grandpa's mother's curses from behind, the fortune teller swiftly walked away. Thao shuddered and spoke up. If they had listened to the fortune teller that day, nothing would have happened. Ngan replied, "Knowing that wouldn't have changed anything. Fate is something we have to accept." Thao continued with her question. "Will that fortune teller come back to say anything else?" Thao asked, just as Ngan had expected. Ngan replied, "No, she disappeared without a trace. Everyone in the neighborhood regrets not knowing such a wise person." Still curious, Thao continued, "Did Huyen's cousin come back again?" "Yes," Ngan exclaimed, seeing Thao's eager expression, and continued her story. "I told Huyen that about 100 days after Kwang's passing, his parents took Huyen to Kwang's house to visit. A soccer ball accidentally rolled into Kwang's room, prompting Huyen to chase after it and enter." "Oh, so Kwang's room was still open?" Thao interrupted excitedly. Ngan shook her head and continued. "His room was used by his mother because she missed her son, so she moved into that room. The soccer ball rolled under the bed, and Huyen had to bend down to pick it up. He widened his eyes when he saw Kwang crawling under the bed, wearing blue jeans and a blue shirt. Everyone later confirmed that he was dressed exactly like that when he passed away." Huyen described how Kwang's face and body showed no signs of injury or anything frightening, except for 2 tiny mustaches growing at the corners of his mouth, which scared Huyen so much that he cried out in fear. Huyen mentioned that Kwang even reached out to him, but he was so scared that he screamed, causing everyone to rush in and call out to him. He turned towards them, pointing towards under the bed and crying. Everyone was shocked and felt sorry for Kwang's untimely death at such a young age, Ngan concluded. Thao nodded thoughtfully and asked, "Did Kwang come home again after that?" Ngan replied, "For his mother, he only visits in her dreams and reminds her to lock the storage room door. But for Huyen, he visits often. Whenever Huyen comes over, he stays in Kwang's room and often stands at the head of the bed, just looking at his nephew." Thao pondered for a moment before saying, "That's Ηere, seriously!" Ngan nodded in agreement and looked at Thao, waiting for her next question. "Tell me your story." Thao sighed and began recounting her experience. Yesterday, she and Ngan went for extra math lessons together, but at a junction, they split directions. Thao turned right to head home. Although not far, her path was quite deserted. This area mainly housed rental accommodations for factory workers who often worked overtime, making the streets quiet and dimly lit. Fortunately, there were streetlights installed so Thao could see her way, A large milkwood tree's branches overshadowed a spot, causing darkness that forced Tao to use her phone's flashlight. As she walked, her foot suddenly twisted on a pothole, causing her to fall and sit on the ground in pain. Meow! Meow! A cat's cry sounded as if it was caught by something, adding to Tao's distress. She squinted towards an abandoned house behind the milkwood tree, where she could distinctly see two green eyes of a cat. Under the faint moonlight filtering through the branches and the flickering street lamp, Tao reluctantly made out a figure sitting leaning over, tightly gripping the cat and pressing it into its mouth, chewing leisurely. Despite the cat's agonized cries and struggles, it was futile. It remained trapped in the person's jaws. The figure was a man, identifiable by his short hair and masculine build. Tao could hear the gruesome sound of chewing bones echoing in the quiet night, sending chills down her spine. She instinctively covered her mouth, trying not to breathe too loudly, witnessing the man chew on the unfortunate cat's live flesh. Blood sprayed as he gnawed, the metallic scent permeating the air nearby. Tao dared not move, frozen in horror, watching the man consume the cat's tail too. Clumsily wiping his mouth with his hand, the man then stealthily stood up and vanished into the darkness. A passing car's headlights illuminated Tao's position, prompting the driver to stop and ask, "Is that you, Tao? Why are you sitting here like this?" Recognizing the neighbor from nearby, Tao quickly stood up and stammered, trying to explain. She and Tao exchanged words before Tao climbed into her car to hitch a ride home. After sharing her story, Tao looked at Ngan, waiting to hear her response. Ngan pondered quietly before saying, "Have you ever heard Huyen talk extensively about ghosts and demons, but I've never heard of a ghost going around eating cats like that. Is the old man suffering from a nerve disorder?" Not likely a nerve disorder to that extent, but that strong smell. How could anyone bear it? This morning on my way to school, I saw many scattered red marks in that area. Ngan and Tao exchanged glances, contemplating the situation, when a voice from outside the cafe called out, "Hey Tao, Ngan, you went for a drink without inviting us?" Their classmates Nu, Mai, and Kwa approached. They quickly joined Tao and Ngan at their table and ordered bubble tea. Mai looked at Tao and Ngan curiously, asking, "Why do you both look so serious and thoughtful like old ladies? What's going on?" Tao sighed deeply, while Ngan recounted the entire incident to their friends. Each of them widened their eyes in shock, collectively pondering what kind of person that man could be. The tense atmosphere was broken when Nu spoke up. "Tao, did you not see his face yesterday?" Tao glanced sideways before replying. "If I had seen his face, I would have figured it out. I only saw the figure of a middle-aged man, but the cat's eyes haunted me. It seemed like it was pleading for help, but I felt indifferent." Kwa reassured Tao. "Don't overthink it, Tao. It's not your fault." Mai slammed the table, exclaiming loudly, "Seriously, I don't know who that could be? Should we meet at the end of Tao's alley tonight?" Nu agreed, saying, "Exactly. We need to figure out what he is. Maybe he's just a fake pretending to be a spirit or a demon fooling you. Tao?" Tao shook her head hastily and said, No, I don't want to encounter him again. If he's a real ghost, I might die." Mai shook her head and replied, "If he's a ghost, he would have flown away by now. What kind of spirit walks around like a normal person?" Ngan nodded in agreement. "Let me ask Huyen about this." Everyone agreed and changed the topic of conversation, except Tao, whose face still bore a pensive expression. She seemed afraid that something ominous would happen to her friends. At 4:30 p.m., the group chat on their phones buzzed with lively discussions about their plans for the evening. They all agreed to meet up to get to the bottom of things. As twilight fell, Tao arrived early at the alley entrance. still haunted by her thoughts and afraid to venture further into the night. She waited for over half an hour until her friends arrived together and asked, "What time did you clearly see him yesterday?" Thao thought for a moment before replying, "Around 8 p.m. when I was coming back from tutoring." Ngan suggested, "It's only 6:30 p.m. now. How about we grab a drink first?" So they all went together to get drinks, discussing every detail and urging Thao to recount her experience. Mai asked, "Could that old man be staying in that abandoned house?" Thao shook her head. "Probably not. Even though the house is abandoned, there's a big milkwood tree in the front yard that provides shade. Kids often play there during the day, so if he was there, they would have seen him." Nu chimed in, "They play during the day, but he could come at night. Who knows?" This sparked further intense thoughts among everyone. By around 7:30 p.m., they egged each other on and walked briskly towards the milkwood tree. "It's crowded like this. I'm afraid we won't see him," Thao said as they walked, prompting everyone to ponder nervously. "Let's split into 2 groups," Ngan suggested. Everyone stopped and looked at her. Her plan made sense. Being too crowded wouldn't achieve much. Ngan continued, "Kwa, you stand at the milkwood tree with Thao. There's a chance that he might be near the front of the house like yesterday. Mai, Nu, and I will circle around the back of the house to prevent him from changing locations. Keep your phones on silent and call each other if anything happens." Everyone agreed, strategizing silently in their minds. They were determined to identify who this person was. The 3 brave girls cautiously advanced towards the abandoned house in the eerie darkness, shining their flashlight to scrutinize every detail, their nerves tense and their bodies close together. After circling to the back of the house, they settled under a nearby tree, carefully examining their surroundings with the flashlight's beam. The wind rustled the leaves, causing the girls to grasp each other's hands tightly, slightly unnerved by the spooky atmosphere. Ngan's phone suddenly rang. It was Thao, reporting that a group of noisy teenagers had gathered nearby due to a wedding celebration in the neighborhood. She assured them that the mysterious person wouldn't appear there and suggested they proceed to their location. Once all 5 of them regrouped behind the abandoned house, mosquitoes became increasingly active, prompting Mai to swat them away irritably. "Hey, girls, you really don't know anything," Kwa said, handing out a bottle of repellent for each of them to apply to their legs to keep the mosquitoes at bay. Despite the late hour nearing 9 p.m., their target had yet to appear. They began to feel disheartened and considered leaving. Nu was the first to stand up, about to suggest they go back. But the other 4 quickly pulled her down and whispered, "Did you hear footsteps crunching on dry leaves?" They all listened attentively, and indeed heard footsteps. Nu whispered, "If it's not him, I'm heading back now." A motorcycle's light illuminated the house, casting faint light through the gaps in the wooden structure, revealing a patch of ground behind the abandoned house. A figure emerged slowly from the neighborhood and approached. The group exchanged silent glances. Checking their phones, they saw Thao's message urging them not to scream if something terrifying happened. They all nodded in agreement and continued to observe, feeling a suspense akin to watching a horror movie, anticipating how this person's face would look when revealed. A man with a large, imposing face, deep black eyes that seemed devoid of pupils, and streaks of red running across his body as if he could explode at any moment. His mouth hung open, revealing a tongue licking every bit of a whimpering puppy's head held by its collar. Underneath the dense foliage and bushes, the group of 5 friends, without distinguishing between genders, huddled together tightly. Their breathing was rapid and fearful, clinging to each other like clams. Despite his fear, Kwa felt a strange satisfaction knowing Thao was nestled close to him. They sat side by side and Thao clung tightly to Kwa, visibly frightened. He casually dropped half of the puppy down, chewing contentedly, then greedily shoved the rest of the dog into his mouth and swallowed it whole. Despite everyone's intense fear, they couldn't look away from the horrifying spectacle. He lay back, massaging his stomach in satisfaction, then got up and returned to where he had come from earlier. The group breathed heavily and quickly fled the scene, running in the opposite direction from where he had gone. By now, it was 9:30 p.m., and the five of them sought refuge in a nearby cafe. The cafe was relatively empty at this hour, but their presence there brought a sense of relief. After a while of silence, Thao was the first to speak up. "Can I stay at someone's house tonight? I'm too scared to go home," Thao asked hesitantly. Her three female friends agreed to let Thao stay at their place. Kwa wanted to help too, but being of different genders, they couldn't share the same accommodation. Thao dialed her father's number to ask for permission. Her father agreed, but mentioned he couldn't talk long as he was busy at work. So, the four girls headed over to Ngan's house since it was the largest and safest option for them that night. Nobody dared to go home alone that night, given the fear that still lingered from the previous encounter. The next morning, all five friends met up at a dumpling shop for breakfast. Despite ordering 5 plates of fragrant dumplings, none of them felt like eating. The image from the night before made everyone queasy. "Hey, do you guys want some Sting?" Nam, the class monitor, arrived with a bottle of Sting and placed it on the table, hoping to settle their stomachs. The gruesome image still haunted each of them vividly. Throughout their classes, none of them could focus on their studies, their minds constantly wandering back to the events of the previous night. "We were so foolish," Mai exclaimed during their break. After classes, the friends gathered at a nearby bubble tea shop to continue discussing the strange man they had encountered. Ngan suggested, "Why don't we continue stalking that ghost tonight?" Nu choked on her drink upon hearing Ngan's suggestion and quickly responded, "No, I'm already too scared. Please don't joke about it." Thao, Kwa, and Mai nodded in agreement. They wanted nothing more to do with that monstrous figure. Kwa turned to Thao and said, "Thao, promise me you'll go home early tonight. It's too dangerous." Thao shook her head, replying, "I still have to study for the math test. It's coming up soon." Kwa reassured her, "Then let me take you home." Thao smiled and winked at Kwa, grateful for his concern amidst their unsettling experiences. The whole group burst into laughter at Kwa's remark. Nu spoke up teasingly, "Who was the scaredy cat clinging onto Thao last night?" Blushing, Kwa replied, "Yeah, it was my first time. Who isn't scared?" The group chuckled mischievously, teasing Kwa further. It was 7:45 p.m. "You should go home now." "I'll be fine," Thao insisted. "No, I won't feel at ease until I see you safely home," Kwa persisted, walking alongside Thao despite her embarrassment and urging him to go back. As they neared the abandoned house, everything around them seemed eerily dark, with barely discernible pathways. Taking the lead, Kwa strapped on a headlamp, took Thao's hand and said, "Hold tight and let's run." Before Thao could react, Kwa gripped her hand tightly and sprinted past the ominous house. They only stopped when they reached the illuminated area near someone's home. Breathing heavily, Kwa looked at Thao and asked, "Did you see anything?" Thao shook her head, breathing a sigh of relief. "No, thank you." They continued walking towards Thao's house. "Does your dad work at night?" Kwa asked Thao as he sipped his drink. Thao nodded and explained, "My dad works at a company where, because of his appearance, he works from evening to night with only a few people in the team. He doesn't come home until after midnight. Seeing Kwa lost in thought, Thao continued. Once, when my dad was taking me out for Mid-Autumn Festival, another car hit him while he was crossing the street to pick me up. Since then, he's been a bit self-conscious about his appearance. Kwa nodded, saying, I've heard about your dad's accident, but I didn't realize it was that serious. Thao smiled faintly and continued. Since then, my dad has avoided being around me much. Probably doesn't want his daughter to see him like that. I don't even ask him to take me out anymore, and if I could, I wouldn't dare. Thao gazed thoughtfully out the window, the pitch-black night enveloping everything, sending shivers down her spine. You're going home? Thao suddenly asked Koa. Koa nodded and replied, Yeah, I have to. It's lonely going back now. My parents are away on a business trip. Thao blurted out, Or you could stay here and sleep with my dad. Would that be okay? Koa asked again, smiling brightly when Thao said yes. In Thao's mind, thoughts of the eerie man in the abandoned house lingered. She feared that if something happened to Koa, she would regret it. But I'm worried your dad won't like me. Koa scratched his head and whispered. Thao responded reassuringly, I doubt that. I think my dad needs a son to talk to. Around 9 p.m., the two of them rummaged through the fridge and cooked dinner together. They laughed and joked happily. Little did they know, Mai's beloved dog was sleeping on the porch. Suddenly, it spotted two glowing eyes, bright green like a cat's eyes, shining in the darkness at the apple tree in the front yard. It growled and was about to charge to scare away the presumed cat. However, as it approached, the dog froze in place upon realizing that those eyes didn't belong to a cat, but to a man crawling under the apple tree, staring back at it. Mai's dog was quite intelligent. Instead of barking or growling, it quickly ran inside as if seeking help from someone inside the house. But the little dog was too late. The man's large hand grabbed its head and pulled with force. With a yelp, the dog's head was yanked so violently from its body that it fell to the ground, blood gushing out lifeless. He took his spoils and threw them into his large mouth, chewing and swallowing with a chilling sound. He glanced at Mai's house, grinned, then swiftly darted straight towards the tall wall and disappeared into the shadows of the night. Hello, Dad. Aren't you coming home tonight? Thao listened attentively to the other end of the line, hearing nothing but the wind blowing through the phone. Dad's not coming home tonight. There's too much merchandise. Just go to sleep first. Her father casually replied before hanging up, leaving Thao feeling a bit disappointed as she hung up and looked at Kwa. All right, you sleep in my dad's room. Everything you need is in there. I'll head to my room, she said. Meow, meow. The sound of a tabby cat grooming itself, licking each hair on its legs. It paid no attention to a pair of glowing eyes longing for it. The cat curled up on a small blanket, closing its eyes to sleep. It suddenly jerked awake, feeling something brush past its ear. It was him, that bizarre man, crawling in front of the cat, his long tongue licking its ear. The cat, startled, growled and arched its back, ready to pounce and scratch. But what unfolded before its eyes terrified it as a rough hand gripped its neck and lifted it up. It yowled loudly and scratched fiercely at the hand. Meow! Where are you going? Go inside and sleep. Nu's voice echoed from inside the house, making the man hastily jump over the wooden gate and flee. As Nu stepped out, she couldn't find the cat anywhere. She assumed it had gone out for a stroll and decided it would probably return by morning. Under a dense bush amidst overgrown grass and weeds, the old man glanced around and quickly stuffed the whole cat into his mouth. He gradually swallowed the cat whole, spitting out a few strands of fur that stuck to his throat, making him uncomfortable. He smirked faintly and then glanced in a direction as he continued walking. Without needing to look at the road or streetlights, his eyes glowing brightly, He kept his gaze on that house, stepping quietly into the silent night, unnoticed by anyone. "Why aren't you sleeping, dear?" Mrs. Nga, Mr. Chi's wife, asked. They were Ngan's parents who lived downstairs. Mrs. Nga always found Mr. Chi restless and unable to sleep and asked him. Mr. Chi sighed and replied, "Tonight I have a worrying feeling about my chicken." Mrs. Nga pursed her lips. "Oh my, you're always worried about it more than about me and our daughter." After saying that, she sighed sadly and turned to the wall to sleep. Mr. Chai sat up and looked out into the front yard where the chicken was kept in its coop. Seeing her husband not sleeping but sitting and looking out into the yard, Mrs. Nga said, "All right, go outside and bring it in for me. Otherwise, I won't be able to sleep tonight." Mr. Chi waited for those words and quickly ran outside to turn on the lights in the yard. He intended to bring the chicken inside to ensure its safety. "Oh, where's the chicken?" Mr. Chi froze, as he couldn't see the chicken anywhere. He walked closer to the coop where the chicken was kept and was shocked to find its lifeless body lying there. Oh my goodness! Mrs. Nga hurried out with Ngan, their daughter, and saw Mr. Chi holding the chicken. "Dad, is the chicken dead?" Ngan rushed over and looked closely at the chicken in his hands. She gasped and stood frozen, mouth agape. Mrs. Nga stood still and sighed. "Chicken or duck? I told you, with such an expensive breed, it should have some passion, but this is just average. It's a loss." Mr. Chi, angered by his wife's words, threw the chicken forcefully on the ground and exclaimed, "Look at it!" Mrs. Nga stared at the chicken lying motionless on the ground. Upon closer inspection, Mrs. Nga initially thought the chicken was dead and its head was tilted to one side. However, it was not the case. Mr. Chi's beloved chicken had been bitten off at the neck without shedding a drop of blood. Its body looked shriveled, dry, as if drained of all its blood. Oh my goodness! Mr. Chi sat down, holding his head, crying like a child. The chicken he loved dearly, which he had cared for in his old age, had now lost its life to some monstrous creature. Sat not far away, that monstrous figure strutted boldly through the darkness, its mouth carrying the chicken's head, satisfied, and departed. "Good morning," Kua smiled as he watched Thao coming down to the kitchen after waking up. Thao, surprised, exclaimed, "Oh, so you're the cook?" Kua nodded and replied, "Yes, that's me. Why?" Shaking her head, Thao answered, "Usually my dad prepares breakfast for me. I thought he did it this morning too. Little did I know it was you. You're good at it?" Kua smiled again and glanced at Thao, saying softly, "Whenever Thao wants, Kua can cook for Thao anytime." She understood there was a hint in his words, blushing slightly and hurriedly setting up the table for breakfast. Seeing his rushed words, Kua changed the subject. "Oh, by the way, why didn't Thao's dad come home this morning?" Thao sighed and replied, "Probably got caught up at work again, so he came home late. Let's eat first, and save some for him." After breakfast, Kua and Thao walked to school together. Since Thao's house was about 1 kilometer away from school, the two slowly walked and chatted along the way. "Hey, you two, come here and have breakfast." Ngan called out to Thao and Kua when she saw them about to enter the school gate. "Why are you having breakfast so late today?" Kua asked, looking at the three girls with a loaf of bread in Ngan's hand. Upon hearing this, Nu quickly finished her bread and replied, "Of course not like anyone else. I had breakfast from home and you guys, I even smell the scent of happiness." They all laughed heartily, looking at the two, making Tao feel embarrassed as she hurriedly ran into the school, leaving Kua bewildered, watching her go. "Go after her. What are you waiting for?" Nu's words weren't even finished when Kua chased after Thao, catching up with her and walking into class together. After school, the group of 5 gathered at a bubble tea shop near the school and chatted. Ngan sighed and spoke up. "You guys, I'm really sad. This morning, My grandpa just sat in front of the house, looking at the chicken coop, feeling so down. She recounted everything that had happened the previous night at her home. Nu and Mai also shared about their missing dog and cat. Blood was scattered all over their yard. Only Kwa and Thao, whose house didn't have any pets, didn't experience anything. The friends buzzed with excitement, discussing how such coincidences could happen. Thao pondered for a while and whispered, "Or maybe, because of that monster." "Which monster?" Mai quickly asked. She received a thump on the head from Ngan and Nu said, "The monster that swallowed the dog. Haven't you forgotten?" Mai thought for a moment and nodded. "Right, my dog was quite similar." Furious, Mai threw her bubble tea cup to the ground and stood up, saying, "If I meet it, I'll twist its neck to death." Ngan pulled Mai down and said, "Are you crazy? Last time we tried to catch it, and yesterday we paid for it with our pets. Do you want it to kill your whole family?" Mai, upon hearing this, was a bit alarmed, sat down quickly without saying another word. The friends were very worried and bombarded Ngan with questions about what to do now, especially Tao, who was very scared because she had encountered him the most. Her house also had to pass by the house where he was residing, so she was very afraid. "What should we do, Ngan?" Thao asked, sounding perplexed, which left Ngan equally unsure how to respond. After a moment of thought, she suggested, "Maybe we should visit my Grandpa Huyen and seek his advice on what to do." Everyone agreed upon hearing this plan, so they decided to meet at Ngan's house later that afternoon before heading to Grandpa Huyen's house. The five of them gathered around Grandpa Huyen, recounting every detail of their recent experiences. Grandpa Huyen, having been through many such situations, was not surprised or frightened. He looked at Thao and asked, "Have you seen that man recently?" Shaking her head, Thao replied, "No, because I usually get home early, so I haven't encountered him." Grandpa Huyen looked at everyone and began to address the main issue. "From what you all describe, it seems he is indeed a demon. According to your accounts, he moves around like a normal person. Therefore, I'm certain he is still alive." "Alive?" All five exclaimed in shock upon hearing Grandpa Huyen suggest that the demon was still alive. Grandpa Huyen continued, "According to my experience, there are two possible scenarios. Firstly, the person has died and their restless spirit remains in this world. However, in this case, they do not consume animal flesh as you've described. They linger in the mortal realm to seek revenge or fulfill unfinished desires. After a period, they will eventually find spiritual peace and move on. Secondly, it's as if they are undead." Grandpa Huyen nodded assuredly. "Yes, undead. When a person dies, their soul departs from their body, but something in the mortal realm prevents them from leaving, so they linger. At certain times, such as noon, midnight, or 3 a.m., when the spiritual energy is strongest, their soul re-enters their body. Within 3 days, they adapt to their decaying body and start exhibiting signs such as needing to consume the blood of nearby animals to counteract the decay. They can still function normally, but tend to avoid sunlight and are more active at night." The group gasped in surprise, gaping at Grandpa Huyen in astonishment. Grandpa Huyen nodded solemnly, affirming, "Indeed, undead. This phenomenon is real. After a period of time, their blood lacks nutrients to sustain them, so they begin to consume both flesh and blood of animals to complete their physical form." Hearing the accounts of their pets being killed with blood scattered around, Grandpa Huyen was certain it was his doing. Perhaps he knew they were stalking him that night, or somehow visited each house to kill the pets as a warning instead of directly threatening them. Therefore, Grandpa advised them to ignore him and never return to the places where they encountered him. Otherwise, they risked becoming victims themselves, not just their pets. Kwa looked at Thao with fear and asked, "What about your house and Thao's?" Since we don't have pets, what will he do to us, Grandpa? Grandpa Huyen shook his head and replied reassuringly, "Yesterday was the day he took action. If something were to happen, it would have already occurred. So I don't think there's anything to worry about." Thao sighed and looked at Kwa, feeling relieved that everything had been explained and resolved, easing her mind. Ngan pondered something and asked, "Then why didn't his pet chicken eat everything, Grandpa?" Grandpa Huyen answered, "As far as I know, a demon is more averse to the blood of a rooster. But it gnawed the head and sucked out half the blood, showing its strength. It knew we would seek help from the elders because it knows your father and his chicken are very dear to us. So it was a challenge to prove its courage. However, it couldn't resist the rooster's blood, indicating it's in the second stage of possession by a demon." Curious, Mai asked, "So there are stages, Grandpa?" Grandpa Huyen sighed and continued, "There are 3 stages, my child. The final stage is when the demon targets a human and feeds on their blood and flesh. This sustains it for about a month without the hassle of hunting for victims every night." Once again, the group of youngsters listened intently to Grandpa Huyen's narrative, hanging on his every word. New, who had posed the initial question, asked again, "But Grandpa, who will it eat?" Grandpa Huyen replied, "Normally, it will target the person in the family it has had the most contact with. This person is who it will consume. In its deep psyche, that person is already in its mind, which will become apparent when it insists on keeping that person close. And by the 100th day, it will carry out its plan to consume that person's flesh." This time, the whole group transitioned from surprise to fear, their minds imagining countless terrifying scenarios. To calm the children's anxious thoughts, Grandpa Huyen continued, "I don't think things are over yet. You all need to be vigilant." "How do we do that, Grandpa?" Ngan, quick-witted as ever, asked immediately. Grandpa looked at his granddaughter and replied, "We have to seek help from a master. I'm also worried about everyone in your family, Ngan." Outside, rain began to fall, each drop tapping softly, but it didn't deter everyone from following Grandpa Huyen to the master's house for assistance. "Mai, what happened to your car?" Ngan, with Nu in tow, asked as Mai's car, carrying Tao, had stalled in the middle of the road. Kwa, driving with Grandpa Huyen, glanced at the rearview mirror and circled back to check on the car's condition. After struggling for a while, the car wouldn't start, so Mai and Thao decided to walk to a nearby repair shop. They told everyone to go ahead in case they were delayed, and if there were any protective spells or talismans, they should request them for the 2. As it was getting late, everyone reluctantly agreed to leave Mai and Thao behind to fix the car, hoping they could catch up later. The 4 parked the car in front of a gate to a house. Everything around was tinged with darkness. Even the flowers in the front yard were artificial, painted in dark colors. Grandpa Huyen rang the doorbell. A boy around 10 years old ran out, opened the door, and greeted Grandpa Huyen with a bright smile. He explained that his grandfather was currently not available, so he welcomed Grandpa and the others inside. Grandpa Huyen smiled and handed the boy some money for snacks. The boy happily opened the door wide and invited everyone in. The black door opened, and the 3 of them imagined that the inside of the house would be as dark as the outside, but it wasn't. Inside, everything was in shades of dignified and solemn golden yellow. An elderly woman around 70 years old sat chewing betel nut, looking at Grandpa Huyen, and hastily said, "Oh my, you've come to visit this old woman again?" Grandpa Huyen smiled warmly, walked over to the old woman as if they were mother and child, and took her hand. "Mother, how are you feeling?" The 3 of them were surprised and stood there dumbfounded. Why did Grandpa Huyen refer to that old woman as his mother? Seeing the children's surprise, Grandpa Huyen quickly explained, "Come here. This is my foster mother. When I was young and encountered supernatural incidents, my parents often sent me to stay with this master to avoid malevolent spirits intending to possess me." Upon hearing this explanation, the children understood and approached respectfully, greeting the old woman before sitting down. Pouring tea for each of them, the old woman asked the young trio, "So, do the other two know about this place?" The children were amazed, wondering how the old woman could know such things. Ngan replied, "Yes, ma'am. The other two are at the repair shop. If they finish in time, they'll come here. Do you have anything to help us with? Please remember to include them too." The old woman smiled and replied, "I'm sure it won't let those two come see the old man." The children were confused about something, but only Grandpa Huyen understood. He hurriedly said, "Mother, please help them." The old woman requested everyone to tell her everything they knew. After listening, she sighed and said, "It's fate, a stubborn ghost indeed. It's heaven's will, heaven's will. Let's hope the child passes through this calamity." The children were still perplexed and didn't fully understand everything, just looking at each other and then at Grandpa Huyen. Grandpa Huyen sighed deeply and looked at the old woman. She grasped the tea table and stood up, saying, "Everyone must have a protective talisman to safeguard themselves. It cannot be neglected." With that, the old woman stepped into a closed room. Inside, she began performing rituals, murmuring something inaudible to the others. The remaining people could only sit and wait. After a while, Ngan's phone rang. It was Thao calling. Ngan and Kwa quickly gave directions to Thao and then went out to fetch Thao and Mai inside. They roughly recounted the situation to Thao and Mai. "It's been half an hour already. What took so long, Grandpa?" Ngan asked anxiously, to which Grandpa Huyen replied nonchalantly. Suddenly, the door to the room where the ritual was being performed opened. The old woman called out, "Kwa, come in here. Come listen to what I have to say." Kwa was startled and a bit frightened, but he glanced at Thao, who gave him an encouraging look. Gathering his courage, he stepped into the room. Inside, the room wasn't as cold as he had imagined, so Kwa felt comfortable sitting down in front of the old woman. After chatting for a while, the old woman handed Kwa an amulet, instructing him to keep it carefully on his person. She also gave Kwa a small glass vial, advising him to keep it hidden and only open it to blow the powder towards any adversaries when needed. As Kwa stepped out, the girls bombarded him with questions, but he couldn't recall what the master had instructed him. He only vaguely remembered that the amulet was given to him for protection. One by one, Ngan, Mai, and Nu went in, each holding their amulets, but it seemed none of them could remember a single word of the master's advice. When it was Tao's turn, she was the same. The old woman even called Grandpa Huyen in, but he was the only one who remembered. To avoid further questioning from the children, however, he pretended he didn't remember either. After bidding farewell to the old woman and heading home, it suddenly started pouring rain heavily. Mai had to quickly run to Thao's house to take her back home. The rain intensified, but because Mai needed to return home, Thao hurried back as well, fearing that what she dreaded most would appear in the dark. Thao showered and changed clothes. As she reached into her pocket, she was horrified to find that the amulet was soaked and torn. Fearful, she called Koa, who reassured her and promised to visit the master tomorrow to get another amulet for her. Suddenly, the sound of the house door opening echoed. "Is it Dad?" Thao wondered why her father was back so early. She stepped out of the room and saw her father clutching his chest and collapsing to the ground. "Dad, are you okay?" Thao rushed to help him up, fetching his heart medication and pouring a glass of water for him to drink. "I'm fine. I just need to rest for a while, and then I'll go back to work, her father Tich replied, his brow furrowed. Enough! You rest. When you're better, you can go back to work. Thou helped her father to the room and cooked a pot of delicious porridge for him. She worriedly stayed up all night taking care of her father. By morning, she was exhausted and asked for permission to skip school for a meal. Are you feeling better, Dad? Thou asked. Her father, Tich, replied, still very tired. Would you mind staying home for a few days to take care of me, dear? Thou readily agreed and went back to the kitchen to reheat the porridge for her father. Little did she know, those bloodshot eyes and a flickering tongue licking around the lips were watching Thao intently, longing for her. Teek sighed heavily and tried to calm himself down, slapping himself a few times in the face, thinking to himself, no, you can't do this. She's your daughter. She suffered so much growing up. No. He frantically picked up a few chicken feathers, cleaning up the battlefield from last night's meal he had while his daughter slept. On that evening, Thao's friends arrived at her house but found it closed. They called her on the phone, and Thao explained that her father was ill and couldn't be exposed to the wind. She searched everywhere but couldn't find the key to unlock the door. After looking throughout the house, she informed them that she couldn't find it and couldn't open the door. Thao could only open the window to receive pastries from her close friend. Thao, where are you? Her father Tik's voice echoed from inside the room, startling her friends. Thao nervously explained, my father is running a high fever and is delirious. Please go back. Thank you for your concern for my father. Are you coming in or not? Tich growled again, this time sounding terrifyingly furious. Thao ran inside, tears welling up in her eyes. She couldn't understand why her father was behaving this way. Are you planning to leave me? Tich asked, shaking his head as Thao cried and replied no. Late into the night, while everyone was asleep, Kwa's phone suddenly rang. It was Thao calling. Hello? Thao, what's wrong? Kwa asked, but instead of a reply from Thao, he heard groans and cries. Suddenly, Kwa heard, Dad, please, let me go. Then the line went dead. The voice said, the subscriber you have dialed? Kwa was shocked and quickly threw on his coat, rushing over to Thao's house. Upon arrival, he found everyone already gathered there. He asked, are you all here to save Thao? All three girls nodded. Tonight, everyone remembered everything that the master and Ba Lao had said, so they hurried here. Shortly after, Ba Huyen and Ba Lao arrived too, noticing the worried faces of everyone. Ba Lao quickly said, I gave the girl a necklace that can provide some protection. Hurry, break down the door. Oh, Kwa, we need to use that glass vial now! With a loud crash, the door was smashed open. Tich stood before Koa, startling him, but Koa didn't forget his mission. He threw the vial of powder right into Tich's face, causing him to recoil. Tich grabbed his daughter's collar, but his hand was in pain from the necklace emitting a faint yellow light, though it couldn't resist for long. His face twisted grotesquely as he growled, Thao belongs to me. You can't take her away. Thao cried out as she saw her father baring his teeth and glaring, realizing it was the monster trying to harm her. Ba Huyen pulled a fat hen from his bag and used scissors to cut its wings, causing blood to trickle down onto the ground. Tich's eyes gleamed brightly as he greedily watched the drops of chicken blood falling down. Despite his madness in abandoning his daughter, he suddenly remembered something and tightly held Thao back. Ba Huyen used the scissors again to prick the hen's wings, making more chicken blood flow. This time, Tich didn't resist anymore. He quickly released Thao and ran towards the chicken. Ba Huyen swiftly threw the hen aside, and everyone quickly untied Thao and brought her outside. After finishing the hen, Tich stiffened, his eyes turning ferocious as he focused on Thao. Come back to me, he demanded. Thao, terrified, hid behind Koa. Tich approached, reaching out towards his daughter, A strand from the necklace tightly wrapped around Tich's hand, causing him to struggle and shout, "Let me go! Let go!" Balao quickly placed the charm on Tich's shoulders and forehead. Then she took out a coin from her pocket and pressed it firmly against Tich's forehead. Dark smoke emanated from him and was absorbed into the coin. Balao asked, "How are you serving the underworld?" Tich's expression softened. He closed his eyes and replied, "Over 3 months ago, while returning late from work, I was hit by a dog and fell into a coma. It was nearly midnight, so no one knew. My soul tried to possess a body because I thought my daughter was alone in the mortal world. After struggling for a while, I finally entered a body and rushed home." Upon hearing this, Thao burst into intense tears and was about to approach her father, but was stopped by the elderly woman. "Are you planning to harm your daughter?" The elderly woman asked sternly. Thao stood still and listened to her father's response. "I know what I did. If everyone hadn't arrived tonight, my daughter would have disappeared forever," Thao wailed, seeing tears also streaming down her father's face. The coin quickly absorbed all the dark smoke within Tich. He opened his eyes and looked at his daughter, saying, "The money I left in the room. I'm sorry I couldn't take care of you. I could only worry about getting here. Father, no matter what, you're still my father. Please forgive me, stay with me." Thao seemed to understand that her father was about to leave, so she screamed and begged him to stay. Tich just smiled, and then a white smoke drifted away from him towards a distant direction. Thao cried and chased after the smoke, leaving behind her father's body as a pile of rotting flesh with foul-smelling green and yellow fluids flowing. The elderly woman used a talisman to ignite and burn the decaying body into ashes, then gathered everything into a jar and handed it to Tao, saying, "You must accept it because your father has passed away. He has been dead for 100 days, and he stayed because of you. Now take care of his final arrangements, my child." Thao held the jar of ashes tightly and fainted. In her delirium, she felt her father gently stroking her hair and saying, "My daughter, I'm always with you. Be strong, my daughter, and